Here's my review of The Gorge. I really liked this movie because one thing I just really liked about it is at its heart and at its core, this is a romance movie between Levi and Dressa. And what's so fascinating about it is this is a romance movie almost purely out of like our lead actors of Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy have so much chemistry even though they don't really interact with each other really not well they interact but not like face to face because they are in charge of this gorge to basically they're in charge of the government on opposites they're both snipers on opposite sides of this giant massive gorge and a lot of this love is just through them looking at each other through binoculars but I don't know and then whether they're like playing chess and it's just I just bought into it personally. I really liked it. And I think from a visual standpoint, I think this movie is beautiful. I really like a lot of the cinematography here. I like how like we're seeing through the lenses of them looking across each other and just their interactions. Although without there's not this is a pretty it's a very somber movie for the most part because there's not much talking between these characters and it's all up to like it's really just a lot of just facial expressions, but it's just so engaging because these actors are both so good. I'm not nearly as familiar with Miles Teller, but I am a really big fan of Anya Taylor-Joy, but both of them are fantastic. And we do kind of see this conspiracy, like we're kind of like slowly learning about this, like what this gorge is. And like, for example, like the first day that Levi comes here, he talks to the guy because who's was in charge for the past year because the idea is that these snipers are both watching the gorge for a full year and then every single year there's a new sniper that comes to the tower and they're explaining how like just got to make sure that nothing comes out because we do see like these monsters coming out but that was just the least interesting part which I think just shows I think how strong just these actors are because like the romance is what I loved here. And I thought like just especially I would say towards the third act just wasn't as good. What kind of dragged it down was the monster action. But it's just seeing these actors, just seeing these characters just communicate. Just it's like I said, I keep using this word, but just the atmosphere of this movie. It's so somber and beautiful. And that's what I just kind of liked about it. It's just and like the color grading it's just a simple thing but to me I couldn't stop looking at it just visually like I mean Apple TV I feel like has just been killing it lately like they've been consistently putting out solid quality content and I mean don't stop and like I said just the communications of them purely writing through notes is just I loved it and whether it's the fun stuff of them just playing chess and then having to like use the binoculars to see their other move and just write everything. It's just like I said, there's so much of this movie that is just building up this romance, which I loved. But I think maybe where the movie falls in the third act is maybe because we're spending so much time building up this romance when we actually get to the gorge, like in the gorge, it's just not as interesting. Like there are parts where like I said towards the I'd say like in the final third of the movie where they have to go into where like they have to go into the gorge and like we're seeing as we're explaining like oh it's a gateway to hell that's what it is and government's been hiding this for 70 years and it's like what and like there's stuff here but just like the gorge itself was just not as interesting to me as this romance was and there were some cool creature designs don't get me wrong but it's just ironically, it's just like the gorge is probably the least interesting part of this movie. And like I feel like any good story or like any good movie, what I really mostly look for when I at least for me, for certain movies, for the majority is less plot, although the plot's important, but just the characters. And that's what I just found so compelling about this movie was because it is a relatively simplistic movie for the most part, and we just have in just I just really enjoyed both these actors just so much, especially Miles Teller. Like I'm not nearly as familiar with him as I am Anya Taylor-Joy, and I'm a big Anya Taylor-Joy fan. But Miles Teller, I don't know what it was. Like, something about him in this film, I just really thoroughly enjoyed watching it. And like I said, and of course, Sigourney Weaver is great as always. Always great to see her. But like, yeah, like I said, it's a lot of this movie just relies on you buying the chemistry between our two leads, and you do. And like I said, I mean, I'm repeating myself this whole time, but it's the romance that is just so engaging. And I think what they should have done is throughout the course of the movie, I feel like we maybe should have learned a little bit more about the gorge itself. Because when we finally go down there, it's just not that interesting. At least I didn't find it as interesting. It just felt like it came to, like, the movie kind of came to a halt there, even though we're already at the last third. Like, so yeah, to me, this is a pretty good movie. This is a pretty great movie, even. But I think that the actual ending of the movie, like the last like 10 minutes, are pretty good as well, which I also really liked, which I'm not going to go too into spoilers about it. But the actual the whole third act, I just wasn't really as big a fan of as the first two acts, which I really liked. And the monster design here, it's okay. Like, I mean, this is a PG-13 movie, so it couldn't really go too scary. And I mean, I didn't really think it necessarily needed to be like rated R or anything. But I just think that the monsters should have been scarier because we're building up this gorge, and these are basically like these demons, these monsters, but they're just not really that scary. And that's kind of what just like it kind of feels almost anticlimactic when we finally get to the gorge. So yeah, this is, in my opinion, this is a very good movie. I think it's almost great. I just think that the third act, other than like the last like 10 minutes, I think that I really liked, was just kind of not as strong as the first two acts. And I did not enjoy really the monsters as much as I did the romance. But yeah, overall though, I'm sound like I'm glazing this movie, but I'm not. This movie is really good with some problems, but overall it's a solid, good movie. And I think that even if you're not really big into like whether monster or sci-fi, if you're like into romance, I think that you would like this movie. I would definitely check it out.